Imagine like spending 40 years building this massive $100 million family business.
Right. Just pouring your absolute blood, sweat, and tears into it.
Exactly. You employ hundreds of people, you build this incredible legacy, and then literally the day after your funeral, the government steps in.
And they force your grieving kids to just, sell the whole thing.
Yeah, to some private equity firm for pennies on the dollar. And it's all just so they can generate enough liquid cash to pay this massive 40% estate tax bill.
I mean, it happens far more often than people realize, too.
Which is just wild to me.
It really is. The wealth is just completely dismantled because their planning focus entirely on, like, accumulating the money.
Yeah.
And they completely ignored the actual mechanics of transferring it.
Well, welcome to a brand new deep dive, everyone. Today, we are basically tearing down this huge assumption that wealth just naturally survives the person who made it.
Right, because it definitely does not.
No, it doesn't. Building a fortune is obviously an incredibly difficult task, but we are looking at a landscape today where just handing the keys over to the next generation can trigger these really catastrophic structural vulnerabilities.
Absolutely. It's a minefield.
It is. So our source material today is highly specific. We're diving into the CFA curriculum, specifically reading W7, which is called Transferring the Wealth.
A very dense but very important reading.
Super dense. But our mission today is to decode the precise legal architecture, the financial mechanisms, and, the strategic frameworks that elite private wealth managers use.
Yeah, the tools they use to ensure that fortunes don't get decimated by taxes or trapped in legal limbo, or honestly just mismanaged by unprepared heirs. Because the underlying reality you have to confront here is that wealth transfer is this highly calibrated balancing act.
Right. It's never just writing a check.
Not at this level, no. You have individuals trying to maintain a grip on their assets while simultaneously trying to minimize massive tax liabilities, right? And they're trying to bypass incredibly strict legal pitfalls, all while fulfilling deep personal or like philanthropic values. Every single lever you pull affects the others.
So true. So let's start with a lever that seems, at least on the surface, to be the simplest one.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, if you want to avoid a massive estate tax bill when you die, the most obvious solution is to just give the money away while you are still alive, right?
Right, and the formal terminology for that in the reading is an inter vivos transfer, which just translates from Latin to between the living.
Between the living, got it.
Yeah, it's a lifetime gratuitous transfer. The baseline mechanics just involve a donor, the person making the gift, and a donor, the person receiving it.
Okay, but because we're dealing with massive sums of money and, well, the tax authorities, I imagine that word gratuitous carries a very heavy legal definition.
Oh, it carries an absolute bright line. It's not casual at all.
I figured.
Yeah, for a transfer to legally qualify as a gift and actually trigger the relevant tax benefits, it requires strict donative intent.
Donative intent. Okay, meaning what exactly?
Meaning the donor is making the transfer with zero expectation of receiving any economic benefit or service or really any reciprocal value in return.
Zero expectation. None at all.
Right. The donor must completely relinquish all legal claim to those specific assets. Just let them go entirely.
I kind of have to push back on the reality of that, though, because, we are talking about human psychology here, not just the tax code.
That's a very fair point.
Right. Like, is a massive financial gift ever truly devoid of expectation?
Legally, yes. Emotionally, usually no.
Exactly. If I hand my kid $5 million to start a real estate firm, the legal paperwork might say no strings attached, but there is definitely an undeniable, invisible string attached to that money.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Behavioral expectation is always there, and you're hitting on the core friction that wealth managers have to navigate every single day.
It must be exhausting for them.
It is. There's this massive gulf between the legal requirement of donated intent and the incredibly complex psychological ecosystem of a wealthy family.
Because legally, the capital is just gone.
Exactly. But emotionally, the donor almost always still feels a sense of ownership over it. And this tension is what the curriculum actually defines as the acquirer's dilemma.
The acquirer's dilemma. So the person who acquired the wealth is basically trapped.
Yep. Trapped between wanting to give it away and being absolutely terrified to let it go.
That makes total sense. Consider the psychology of an entrepreneur who has spent 50 years building a fortune.
Right. Their whole identity is wrapped up in it.
Exactly. Their sense of security, their authority within the family hierarchy, it's all intrinsically tied to the control of that capital.
So to make an inter vivos transfer is to intentionally strip away a portion of that power. It creates immense emotional friction.
So how does a wealth advisor actually get a client over that psychological hurdle?
It takes a lot of framing.
Because if it physically hurts to relinquish control, why wouldn't they just hold on to the empire until the very last second?
Well, advisors usually focus on three highly compelling counterweights, strategic and emotional ones. The first is experiential.
Meaning they actually want to see the money in action.
Precisely. Many wealth creators realize they want to witness the impact of their wealth firsthand.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They want to be alive to see their grandchild graduate from university they paid for, or see their daughter thrive in a business that they seed funded.
That's the joy of giving, right? You can't see the smile on their face if you're dead.
Exactly. The second counterweight is timing the utility of the capital.
Timing the utility, what does that look like in practice?
Think about it like this. An inheritance received when an heir is, say, 65 years old and already completely financially established.
Right, they don't really need it as much then.
Exactly. It has a radically lower marginal utility than a substantial gift received at age 30 when that same heir is buying a house or starting a family.
Oh yeah, when the money actually changes the trajectory of their life. Okay, that makes perfect logical sense.
It does.
But I know the third reason has to be the math. I mean, we're talking about billionaires here.
Oh, the math is undeniable. Lifetime gifting is a primary engine for shrinking the taxable estate.
Because a lot of places have progressive estate taxes, right? The more you have, the higher percentage they take.
Exactly. By systematically transferring wealth inter vivos, a donor can utilize things like annual gift tax exclusions or fund generation skipping transfers.
Which avoids taxing the middle generation entirely, right?
Right. And fundamentally, it freezes the value of an asset.
Oh, walk me through that. How does giving it away freeze the value?
Well, if you gift an asset worth $1 million today, and it grows to $10 million by the time you actually die, that $9 million of appreciation happens completely outside of your taxable estate.
Oh, wow. So you don't pay estate taxes on the growth at all?
None.
Okay. But as tight as that math is, no wealth creator I know just hands over a briefcase of cash and walks away hoping for the best.
Definitely not.
Right. If they have that acquirer's dilemma we talked about, this deep-seated need for control, how do they legally transfer the wealth to get that tax break without actually giving the heir the ability to just blow it all in Vegas?
They don't hand over cash. They build an architecture of control.
An architecture of control. I like that.
Yeah. And the foundational building block of that architecture, at least in common law jurisdictions, is the trust.
Okay, let's unpack the mechanics of a trust, because people throw that word around all the time like trust fund kids or living trusts.
Yeah, it's very misunderstood.
Right. So how does it actually function as a mechanism of control?
A trust is essentially a fiduciary relationship. It bifurcates ownership.
Bifurcate, so it splits it in two.
Exactly. You have the grantor, who is the person who originates the wealth. They transfer the legal title of the assets to a trustee.
Okay, and the trustee is the one driving the car, so to speak.
Right. The trustee is a person, or often an institution, that is legally obligated to manage those assets, but not for themselves.
Right, for the third party.
Exactly. For the exclusive benefit of the third party, the beneficiary.
So the grantor separates the legal ownership from the beneficial enjoyment. The trustee holds the keys, but the beneficiary gets the ride.
That is the exact mechanism. Beautifully put. Now, if the grantor's goal is strict, unyielding control over a potentially irresponsible heir, they can establish a fixed trust.
A fixed trust, meaning the rules can't be changed.
Right. The trust document explicitly mandates the timing and the exact amount of every single distribution. The trustee has absolutely no wiggle room.
So it literally says something like, pay the beneficiary $10,000 a month and distribute the remaining principal when they turn 40.
Exactly. It's very rigid.
Very rigid. But what if the beneficiary develops a massive substance abuse problem at age 39?
That is the nightmare scenario.
Right. Because if it's a fixed trust, the trustee is legally forced to hand over millions of dollars to someone who might literally use it to destroy themselves.
And that catastrophic scenario is exactly why ultra-high net worth individuals heavily favor the discretionary trust.
Discretionary, meaning the trustee uses their own judgment.
Yes. In a discretionary trust, the grantor gives the trustee the absolute authority to decide when, how, and if distributions are made at all.
Wow, so the trustee has all the power.
They do. The trustee assesses the beneficiary's situation in real time. If there is an addiction issue, the trustee simply shuts off the cash flow.
They just cut them off.
Yep. And instead of handing them cash, they might just pay for rehabilitation facilities directly.
So the trustee essentially becomes the gatekeeper executing the grantor's invisible will.
Exactly.
But there is another massive benefit here beyond just protecting the heir from themselves. What about protecting the heir from the outside world?
Asset protection.
Hmm.
This is where the discretionary trust becomes an absolute impenetrable vault.
A vault. Walk me through that.
Well, if a grantor establishes an irrevocable discretionary trust, they have legally severed their own ownership.
Because it's irrevocable, they can't take it back.
Right. The assets belong to the trust now. Therefore, if the grantor gets sued or goes bankrupt, their creditors cannot pierce the trust.
Because it's not the grantor's money anymore. The money's just gone.
Exactly.
And what about the beneficiary? If the heir gets into a massive lawsuit or, goes through a highly contentious divorce, can their ex-spouse or their creditors demand the trust assets?
No, they can't. And the legal logic behind it is really fascinating.
Why is that?
Because the distributions are entirely at the discretion of the trustee, right?
Yeah, the trustee decides if they get anything at all.
Exactly. So the beneficiary actually has no legal right to demand the money. And if the beneficiary can't force the trustee to hand over the cash, the beneficiary's creditors certainly can't either.
Oh, wow. That makes so much sense.
Right. You cannot attach a lien to an asset that your debtor does not have a legal right to claim.
That is brilliant. The wealth is just suspended in this legal force field.
It really is.
But wait, everything we're talking about relies on this highly specific legal concept of bifurcated ownership, right? Like splitting legal title from beneficial use.
Yes.
Does that work everywhere in the world? Like, is this a universal thing?
It absolutely does not. And this is a massive hurdle in international wealth management.
Really?
Oh, yeah. The concept of the trust was born out of English common law, dating all the way back to the Crusades, actually.
Okay, so very English.
Very. But huge portions of the globe, continental Europe, Latin America, parts of Asia, they operate under civil law systems.
Civil law, like derived from the Napoleonic Code or Roman law?
Exactly.
And civil law doesn't recognize trusts, like, at all.
Historically, no. Civil law requires absolute ownership.
Meaning one person owns the whole thing.
Right. The idea that one person owns the legal title while another person owns the economic benefit is just entirely foreign to strict civil law.
Wow, so you just can't use a trust there.
No. But more importantly, civil law jurisdictions enforce something called forced heirship rules.
Wait, forced heirship? Are you saying the government dictates who inherits your money?
Explicitly.
Yes.
That is insane. In many civil law countries, a significant portion of an estate, often a third to even a half of it, is legally reserved for the spouse and direct descendants.
So you literally cannot disinherit your children.
You cannot.
Even
Even if you completely despise your son and want to leave everything you own to a university, the state will step in, invalidate that portion of your will, and force the capital into your son's hands.
Wow. Okay, so if a European billionaire wants to avoid these forced heirship laws and maintain the kind of multi-generational control we just talked about,
Yeah.
but their home country doesn't recognize common law trusts, what on earth do they do?
They utilize highly specialized civil law hybrid structures.
Hybrids. Like what?
Well, the CFA reading specifically highlights two crucial vehicles native to jurisdictions like Liechtenstein,
Okay, what are they?
the Anstalt and the Stiftung.
Anstalt and Stiftung. Let's define those because they sound pretty formidable.
They are.
How does an Anstalt actually bypass this problem?
Well, an Anstalt translates roughly to establishment. Think of it as a corporate hybrid.
A corporate hybrid?
It is a separate legal entity, just like a corporation, but it actually has no shareholders.
No shareholder. Who gets the money then?
It has beneficiaries. And crucially, an Anstalt can conduct active commercial business.
Oh, so it can actually trade and operate like a normal company.
Exactly. But it also provides a really high degree of confidentiality and asset protection.
Because it's its own entity.
Right. Because the Anstalt is the absolute legal owner of the assets, the individual founder no longer owns them.
Right, which shields them from the forced heirship laws.
Exactly. It can potentially shield those assets from domestic forced heirship claims, depending on the specific treaties and the timing of the transfers, of course.
Okay, so an Anstalt is essentially a business-capable vault.
That's a great way to put it.
What about the Stiftung then?
A Stiftung translates to foundation. Now, unlike the Anstalt, a Stiftung is strictly prohibited from carrying out active commercial trade.
Oh, so it can't run a business.
Nope. It is a private, non-commercial institution designed exclusively to hold and manage assets, usually for the benefit of a specific family across multiple generations.
So it basically functions very much like a common law trust.
Functionally, yes, but mechanically, it's very different. It is a registered corporate entity with a board of directors, and it's bound by a very strict charter created by the founder.
So it doesn't rely on that weird common law split of ownership.
Exactly. It doesn't need bifurcated ownership. It relies on the civil law recognition of a private corporate entity executing a documented purpose.
It really highlights how bespoke wealth management is at this level.
Yeah.
You are literally engineering custom legal entities just to navigate the specific, historical quirks of a country's legal code.
You really are. It's structural engineering, basically.
It is. But let's bring it back to the U.S. tax code for a second, because the source material mentions a specific trust structure that honestly sounds like a complete contradiction in terms.
Ah, I think I know which one you mean.
The intentionally defective grantor trust.
The IDGT, yes. It is arguably the most powerful wealth transfer mechanism in the entire American tax system.
Okay, explain the defective part to me.
Sure.
Because if I am paying some elite law firm tens of thousands of dollars to draft a trust for my family, the last thing I want them to tell me is that they broke it on purpose.
Right. It sounds like malpractice.
Exactly. What exactly is the defect?
The brilliance here lies in exploiting a gap. It exploits the difference between how the IRS views estate taxes and how it views income taxes.
Wait, they view them differently.
Oh, yeah. They're two completely separate rule books.
Okay, walk me through that.
When a grantor sets up an IDGT, they make a completed gift of assets into the trust. The trust is irrevocable.
So under the estate tax rulebook, those assets are successfully removed from the grantor's taxable estate.
Exactly. The estate tax problem is solved. The vault is locked.
Okay, so far so good. Where's the defect?
The defect is in the income tax side. The attorney intentionally drafts a specific clause into the trust document that violates the grantor trust rules under the income tax code.
A clause that violates the rules. Give me an example.
A very common defect is giving the grantor the power to swap assets of equal value in and out of the trust in a non-fiduciary capacity.
Wait, if the grantor can just swap assets around whenever they want, doesn't that mean they basically still control it?
Under the income tax rules, yes. Yeah. The IRS looks at that swap power and says, aha, because you retain this specific power, we consider you to be the owner of this trust for income tax purposes.
Okay, so the trust owns the assets for estate tax.
Right.
But the grantor personally owns them for income tax.
Yes.
That sounds like a terrible deal for the grantor.
How so?
Well, say the trust's investments generate millions in dividends, right?
Yeah.
The grantor has to pay the tax bill on those millions out of their own personal checking account.
Yes. And that is the engine of the entire strategy.
What?
Because they are legally obligated to pay that income tax under the income tax rules, the IRS does not consider that tax payment to be an additional gift to the trust beneficiaries.
Oh. Oh, wow. I think I see.
Think about the compounding math here. It's staggering.
Yeah, walk me through the math.
The trust assets are growing completely tax-free.
Yeah.
There is no tax drag on the portfolio whatsoever.
Because the trust isn't paying the taxes.
Right. The trust keeps 100% of its dividends and capital gains to just reinvest and compound.
And meanwhile?
Meanwhile, the grantor is bleeding down their own personal taxable estate to pay the trust's tax bills.
That is just, it's a dual-action wealth transfer.
It really is. You are simultaneously shrinking the estate that will eventually be taxed at death,
while pouring just pure, untaxed rocket fuel onto the assets you've already transferred to your heirs inside the trust.
Exactly. It completely redefines what a flaw is, doesn't it?
It's an incredible mechanism. You are literally turning a personal tax liability into a backdoor tax-free gift.
The IRS hates it, but it's totally legal.
Okay, so we've established how we build these fortresses, right? The trusts, the stiftungs, the IDGTs.
The architecture is in place.
But we need to look at the raw material going inside those fortresses.
The assets themselves.
Right, because handing over a portfolio of publicly traded index funds is easy to value. The IRS just looks at the ticker.
Exactly.
But what if the wealth is illiquid? Let's go back to that $100 million family business I mentioned at the very start of the show.
Okay.
How do you actually transfer shares of a private company without triggering a catastrophic tax event?
This is where we transition into the art of valuation strategy.
Valuation. Okay.
Like you said, if you gift Apple stock, the IRS knows exactly what it's worth. They just look at the closing price on the NASDAQ.
Right.
But shares in a private family enterprise have no public market. You can't just look them up on Robinhood.
So what happened?
They require a formal, highly detailed appraisal. And wealth managers rely on well-established valuation principles to significantly reduce the on-paper value of those private shares before they are ever gifted.
Before they're gifted, so they shrink the value first.
Yes. The curriculum details 2 specific mathematical discounts that are applied during this appraisal process.
Okay, let's break down the mechanics of the first one. I think it's the illiquidity discount or the discount for lack of marketability.
Right, lack of marketability.
Yeah.
The fundamental economic principle here is that liquidity has intrinsic value.
Being able to sell something fast is worth money.
Exactly. If you own a minority stake in a private manufacturing company, you cannot liquidate that position tomorrow.
You definitely can't.
No. Finding a willing buyer requires investment bankers, legal audits, months of deep due diligence, and really heavy transaction costs.
It's a huge headache.
It is. Because of this inherent friction, a rational buyer in the real world will demand a lower price for those private shares compared to an identical stream of cash flows from a publicly traded, highly liquid company.
So the appraiser basically goes to the IRS and tells them, sure, a strict mathematical model says these shares are worth $1 million, but in the real world, it would take a year to sell them, so we are taking a haircut.
Precisely. And the IRS acknowledges this reality. It's standard practice.
What kind of haircut are we talking about?
Well, depending on the complexity and restriction of the shares, an appraiser might apply a 15% to 25% lack of marketability discount.
Based on what? Just a guess.
No, it's based on empirical data, usually historical restricted stock studies.
Okay, so that covers the difficulty of selling the shares. What is the second discount?
The lack of control discount.
Lack of control?
Yes. This applies specifically when a donor is transferring a minority interest in the business.
Okay, so anything less than 50.1% of the voting rights.
Correct. If you own, say, 10% of a family business, you are entirely at the mercy of the majority shareholder.
Right. You can't make any decision.
Exactly. You cannot force the company to declare a dividend. You cannot fire the CEO. You cannot force a sale or a merger.
You are literally just a passenger on their bus.
You're a passenger. And in the open market, investors pay a huge premium for control, and they demand a massive discount to be a minority passenger.
That makes sense. The text mentions an example of a 20% discount for lack of control.
That's a standard benchmark, yes.
Let's actually run the math on this to see the real impact. Let's say our founder wants to gift a block of non-voting shares in the family business to their daughter, and the baseline economic value of that block is, let's say, $10 million.
Okay, $10 million.
Do we just add the 15% marketability discount and the 20% control discount and say, cool, it's 35% off?
No, you don't just add them up. The IRS doesn't let you do that.
How does it work then?
The discounts are applied sequentially, not additively. They multiply against the remaining value at each step.
Okay, let's walk through the steps then. We start at $10 million.
Right. First, the appraiser applies the 15% discount for lack of marketability.
Okay, 15% of 10 million, that shaves off 1.5 million. So the value drops down to $8.5 million.
Correct. That's your new baseline.
Then we apply the 20% discount for lack of control against that new $8.5 million figure.
Exactly. Not the original 10.
Okay, so 20% of 8.5 million is 1.7 million. We subtract that 1.7 from the 8.5, and we land at a final valuation of $6.8 million.
And that $6.8 million is the fair market value that gets reported to the tax authorities.
Wow.
By properly structuring the ownership and utilizing minority non-voting shares, the founder just transferred $10 million of true economic value, while only using up $6.8 million of their lifetime gift tax exemption.
That's amazing. A full 32% of the taxable value just legally vanished during transit.
It vanished. And that is the exact mechanism that prevents the forced sale of the family business.
Right, because if a founder holds 100% of the company until the literal day they die, the estate is hit with a tax bill on the full control premium valuation.
Exactly, the whole 100%.
But if they spend 20 years systematically gifting minority stakes into IDGTs using these exact discounts, they transfer the wealth piece by piece, avoiding the control premium entirely.
You've hit on the core strategy of business succession planning.
It's brilliant.
The goal is to separate the economic value from the voting control, transfer the economic value at a steep discount, and retain the voting control until the very end.
Okay, so we've mapped out this entire inter vivos architecture.
We have?
The IDGT is funded, the private shares are discounted and transferred, the vault is locked. But an irrevocable trust isn't just some static holding cell, right?
No, it's usually a highly active portfolio.
Which brings us to the person actually driving the vehicle, the trustee.
And the legal burden placed upon the trustee is immense.
I can imagine.
They are not merely administrators just pushing paper. They are fiduciaries.
Yeah.
And they are bound by what is known as the prudent investor rule.
The prudent investor rule, I mean, it sounds like a helpful suggestion, but the curriculum makes it very clear this is a strict legal liability framework.
It's the law.
How does a trustee actually prove they're being prudent? Is it just like tracking the S&P 500 and hoping for the best?
Not at all. It's much more complex. Historically, a long time ago, prudence was judged asset by asset.
Meaning what?
Meaning if a single stock in the entire trust went bankrupt, the trustee could be sued for that one bad pick.
Even if the rest of the portfolio was up 20%.
Yes. Which, as you can imagine, led to trustees basically just hoarding ultra-conservative government bonds to protect themselves.
Right, but that severely damages the long-term purchasing power of the trust because of inflation.
Exactly. It was terrible for the beneficiaries.
Mm.
But under the modern prudent investor rule, performance is judged on the portfolio as a whole, taking risk and return into account holistically.
Okay, so they look at the big picture.
Yes, but the rule explicitly outlines a multifaceted checklist the trustee must actively balance.
What are the specific criteria on that checklist?
Well, the trustee must analyze general economic conditions, obviously.
Sure.
They have to look at the expected effects of inflation or deflation, the expected tax consequences of their investment decisions, and the expected total return from both income and capital appreciation.
I mean, that just sounds like standard portfolio management so far.
It is until you hit the beneficiary-specific requirements.
Okay, what are those?
The trustee must deeply analyze the terms and purposes of the trust, the immediate needs for liquidity and regular income, and most critically, the other outside resources of the beneficiaries.
Wait, I really want to focus on that last point because that's huge.
It changes everything.
It requires the trustee to look completely outside the boundaries of the trust itself. It actually reminds me of a DJ working a highly demanding crowd.
A DJ? I like that. Let's run with it.
Yeah, because a DJ can't just play a pre-programmed set of objectively good songs, right? They have to read the room.
Right.
If the energy in the room shifts, the DJ has to seamlessly transition the tempo. If a trustee fails to read the beneficiary's outside circumstances, what actually happens?
Let's apply your DJ metaphor to a real-world scenario.
Okay.
Imagine a trust established for a 25-year-old beneficiary.
Got it.
The trustee looks at the beneficiary's life. Let's say they are an entry-level graphic designer making $40,000 a year in a very expensive city.
Okay, so they need cash.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The trustee correctly determines that the beneficiary needs supplemental liquidity just to afford rent. So the trustee builds a portfolio heavy in high-yield corporate bonds and dividend-paying stocks.
Right, which generates a steady, let's say, $60,000 a year in taxable cash flow.
Perfect. The DJ is playing the exact right tempo for the crowd.
Everyone is happy.
But 2 years later, that graphic designer inherits a massive, separate fortune from another relative. Or maybe they launch a tech startup on the side that goes public. Suddenly, the beneficiary is sitting on $20 million of their own outside wealth. They are now in the absolute highest income tax bracket possible.
Wow. Okay, so the energy in the room just completely shifted.
Completely. If the trustee doesn't update their strategy and just continues to pump out $60,000 of highly taxed ordinary income to a beneficiary who absolutely does not need the liquidity anymore.
They're actually hurting them.
Yes, the trustee is actively harming the beneficiary's tax position. Under the prudent investor rule, the trustee is legally obligated to pivot.
So what should they do?
They should likely sell off all those high-yield bonds and transition the portfolio into aggressive long-term capital appreciation or perhaps tax-exempt municipal bonds, maximizing the after-tax wealth accumulation for the heir.
And if they fail to do that? If the trustee just leaves it on autopilot because they're lazy?
They open themselves up to massive legal liability. A beneficiary can literally sue the trustee for a breach of fiduciary duty.
Seriously. Just for not updating the portfolio?
Yes. If the court finds that the trustee failed to act prudently, the trustee can be personally surcharged.
Surcharged? Meaning what?
Meaning they have to pay out of their own pocket to restore the trust's lost value.
Oh, wow. That perfectly explains why institutional trust companies charge the high fees they do. They are carrying enormous legal risks.
Exactly. They are on the hook.
Okay, so we've built this incredibly intricate architecture to shift wealth and shrink the taxable estate while the client is alive.
We have.
But obviously, no one gives away their very last dollar, right?
Right.
At some point, the music stops.
It always does.
And the ultimate vulnerability of this entire system hits the second the grantor's heart stops.
And that brings us to the absolute baseline of estate planning, the posthumous transfer.
Everything we've discussed so far is inter vivos. Now we must discuss what happens at death.
Right. And the terminology shifts here. We are no longer talking about grantors and demise.
Okay, what are we talking about now?
Well, the foundational document of a posthumous transfer is the will. The individual who creates the will is called the testator.
The testator.
Yes. Within that will, the testator makes specific directives, which are known as bequests. And the actual assets received by the beneficiaries are the inheritances.
It honestly seems almost quaint compared to a multi-layered civil law Stiftung. You just write down who gets what.
It is relatively straightforward, assuming the will is valid and comprehensive. But the curriculum spends significant time emphasizing the terror scenario.
The terror scenario.
What happens when there is no will at all?
Ah, intestacy.
Yes. Dying intestate means dying without a legally valid will. And it is arguably the most destructive thing a wealth creator can do to their legacy.
Walk me through the mechanics of that destruction. Like if a client spends their life building a $20 million real estate portfolio
Okay.
and they get hit by a bus before they ever sign their will, what actually happens to those buildings?
Because there is no will to dictate the testator's wishes, the state essentially steps in and writes a generic will for them.
The state decides.
Yes. The estate is thrown into the probate court system, and the assets are distributed according to the rigid mathematical formulas defined by state law.
The state intestacy statutes.
Exactly. Now, these statutes vary by jurisdiction, but they generally follow a strict bloodline hierarchy.
Meaning family first.
Right. The spouse receives a certain percentage, the children divide the rest. If there are no children, it moves up to the parents or out to the siblings.
But wait, what if the wealth creator was entirely estranged from their siblings? Or what if they had a lifelong partner they never formally married?
Under intestacy, the lifelong unmarried partner receives absolutely zero.
Wow.
And the estranged sibling receives a massive windfall. The court does not care about the emotional realities of the family. It only cares about the rigid statutory flowchart.
That's heartbreaking.
It gets worse. If the real estate portfolio cannot be easily divided among, say, the 5 resulting heirs.
Which real estate usually can't.
Right. The court may simply order the forced liquidation of the entire portfolio at a fire sale price, just to distribute the cash.
So a lifetime of strategic accumulation is completely unraveled by a probate judge in a matter of months.
Yep.
And beyond the financial destruction, there's the privacy aspect. Because trusts are private documents, right? But probate is public record, isn't it?
It is entirely public. Anyone, a neighbor, a journalist, a scam artist, can go to the courthouse and see the inventory of assets, the debts, and the names of the heirs receiving the capital.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It invites incredibly damaging family disputes, challenges from alleged creditors, and creates a massive administrative bottleneck that can freeze the assets for years while the lawyers just argue over the pieces.
So the foundational rule of wealth transfer is avoiding intestacy at all costs.
At all costs.
So a will is the absolute minimum viable product of wealth management.
Without a doubt.
But let's look beyond the family entirely for a minute. Because for the ultra-high net worth demographic, the billionaires and the decamillionaires leaving money to their kids only solves a fraction of the equation.
That's true.
The source text makes it very clear that philanthropy isn't just an afterthought for these people. It is a primary, highly engineered mechanism of wealth transfer.
Well, when a family possesses capital that drastically exceeds any reasonable consumption needs for the next 10 generations, the whole paradigm shifts.
Right, they can only buy so many yachts.
Exactly. The central question changes from, how do we secure the bloodline, to what is the ultimate purpose of this excess capital? The curriculum highlights the formalized movement toward massive wealth redistribution, most notably the Giving Pledge.
The Giving Pledge. This was championed by Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, right?
Yes, it was.
It's the commitment to give away the vast majority of your net worth during your lifetime or in your will.
Yeah, and it has profoundly changed the culture of elite wealth. But executing on that pledge requires incredible infrastructure. You cannot simply write a billion-dollar check to a local charity. The charity wouldn't even have the capacity to deploy it effectively. Philanthropy at this scale operates like a massive corporate enterprise.
And the very first step in building that enterprise, according to the reading, is drafting a formal mission statement.
Yes, the mission statement.
I'll admit, when I first read about families drafting mission statements for their charitable giving, it felt incredibly corporate and just kind of hollow.
I hear that a lot.
Right. Like, why does a family need boardroom jargon just to give money to a cause they care about?
Because the endowment is designed to outlive the founder by centuries.
Centuries.
A mission statement isn't just corporate jargon, it is the constitutional bedrock of the foundation.
Hmm.
Think about the timeline here. A wealth creator is deeply passionate about, say, eradicating malaria.
Okay.
They fund a private foundation with $500 million. While they are alive, they direct the grants personally.
That makes sense.
But what happens 60 years later when the founder's great-grandchildren are sitting on the board of directors?
Oh. The great-grandchildren might have entirely different interests. They might want to fund an opera house in London instead of medical clinics in developing nations.
Exactly. Without a legally binding mission statement, mission drift is absolutely inevitable. The original intent of the wealth is erased by the shifting preferences of the descendants.
So a clear, highly specific mission statement aligns the governance structure, dictates the grant-making parameters, and legally binds future generations to the founder's core values.
Exactly. It's another form of intergenerational control just applied to charity.
But it's not just about who gets the grants, right? The curriculum details a fascinating concept called mission-related investing, or MRI.
Ah, yes.
How does that change the actual mechanics of the portfolio?
Well, traditional philanthropy operates on a two-step process. You invest the foundation's endowment in standard profit-maximizing assets like oil companies or tech stocks, and then you take the dividends from those and give them away as charitable grants.
Right, so you make the money over here in the market, and you give it away over there to the charity.
Right. Mission-related investing fuses those two steps. It requires the foundation to align the investment of the corpus itself with the philanthropic mission before a single grant is ever even distributed.
Wow. How does that work?
If the foundation's mission statement dictates environmental conservation, they will literally divest the endowment from fossil fuels and actively invest the core capital into clean energy startups or sustainable agriculture funds or green infrastructure bonds.
So the portfolio itself becomes a weapon for the cause, not just the checking account that funds the cause.
Precisely. You are deploying 100% of the capital toward the mission, rather than just the 5% payout.
But the motivation to build these massive philanthropic structures isn't entirely uniform across the globe, is it? The text points out how different cultural and regulatory environments shape the strategy.
They absolutely do. Wealth managers have to be incredibly cognizant of jurisdiction here. Well, in the United States, philanthropy is heavily incentivized by the tax code. The ability to take massive income tax deductions for charitable contributions drives a significant amount of the structural planning.
Right, the IDGTs, the charitable trusts, they are all engineered around IRS deductions.
But in many European and Asian jurisdictions, those aggressive tax incentives simply do not exist.
So why do they give?
The motivation for philanthropy shifts away from tax optimization and leans much more heavily into cultural legacy, religious obligation, or just maintaining the social standing of the family name across centuries. The regulatory environment really dictates the available tools.
Which brings us to the tools themselves. To execute these mission statements, wealthy individuals rely on a highly specialized suite of financial vehicles. Let's get into the mechanics of these structures.
Let's do it.
The text contrasts private grant-making foundations with donor-advised funds, or DFs. Let's start with the private foundation. What are the operational realities of running one?
A private foundation offers the donor absolute control. They control the board, they control the investments, and they control exactly who gets the grants. However, the IRS imposes a very strict operational toll for that level of control.
What kind of toll?
Private foundations are subject to complex excise taxes, strict prohibitions against self-dealing, and most importantly, the mandatory 5% payout rule.
The 5% rule. Explain how that forces the foundation's hand.
By law, a private foundation must distribute at least 5% of its net investment assets every single year in the form of qualifying charitable distributions.
So if the foundation has $100 million, they absolutely must push $5 million out the door to operating charities that year.
Yes. regardless of whether the stock market is up 20% or down 20%.
That actually requires a massive amount of administrative overhead just to identify, vet, and monitor the charities receiving that $5 million every year.
It does. It essentially requires a full-time professional staff.
So what's the alternative?
Well, if a client wants to commit wealth to charity, capture an immediate tax deduction, but fundamentally avoid the administrative burden and the intense pressure of that 5% payout rule,
Yeah.
the wealth advisor will almost always steer them away from a private foundation and into a donor-advised fund.
Let's break down the mechanics of the DF, because from what I'm reading, it almost sounds too good to be true for the donor.
A donor-advised fund is essentially a dedicated charitable investment account hosted by a public charity,
Like who?
often the charitable arm of a major financial institution, like Fidelity Charitable or Vanguard Charitable.
So the donor doesn't have to create a brand new legal entity. They just open an account under the umbrella of this massive existing charity.
Correct. And when the donor transfers assets into the DF, they are making an irrevocable legal gift to that public charity.
Meaning they get the deduction right then and there.
They immediately receive the maximum allowable income tax deduction for that year.
But, and I think this is the crucial distinction, because the overarching public charity already meets all the IRS requirements. The individual DAF account is not currently subject to any annual distribution requirements.
Nailed it.
Wait, I really want to clarify the math on this because it's crazy.
Walk me through.
A wealthy executive has an incredible year, right? They have a massive liquidity event, like their company goes public, and they need a giant tax deduction right now to offset it.
Okay.
They can transfer $10 million into a DAF in December. They take the massive tax write-off on their current year's taxes, but they don't actually have to give a single dollar of that $10 million to a working charity the next year, or even the year after.
Legally, no, they don't.
That's why.
The $10 million just sits in the DAF, invested in the market, compounding completely tax-free.
So what does the donor actually do?
The donor retains advisory privileges, meaning they can recommend to the sponsoring charity when and where to eventually distribute the funds. They can let the money grow for a decade and then slowly advise grants to their alma mater or a local hospital when they finally feel ready.
So the dive completely separates the timing of the tax deduction from the timing of the actual charitable impact.
Exactly. That is an incredibly powerful lever for a wealth manager trying to optimize a client's specific high-income years.
Okay, so that covers the pure charitable vehicles, but the curriculum ends at the most heavily engineered structures of all, the split interest trusts, the CRATs and the SILETs.
Ah, yes. These are absolute masterpieces of tax code engineering.
Why are they so special?
They are designed for clients who refuse to choose between their charitable desires and their family's financial security. They literally split the economic benefit of an asset into two distinct streams: an income stream and a remainder stream.
Okay, let's establish a mechanical rule of thumb for the listener so we don't get lost in the alphabet soup here.
Good idea.
CRAT stands for Charitable Remainder Annuity Trust. If you see the word remainder in the acronym, it means the charity is waiting at the end of the line. The charity gets what remains. The donor or the heirs get the money first.
That's a perfect heuristic. Let's run a specific scenario to demonstrate the mechanical power of a CR.
Okay, paint a picture for me.
Imagine a client sitting across from you. They're 65 years old, nearing retirement. They hold a highly concentrated position. Let's say $5 million of stock in the company they founded.
Okay, $5 million in one stock. Risky.
Very. Their cost basis in that stock is basically zero because they started the company.
Yeah.
And the stock pays no dividends.
So they need cash flow to fund their retirement lifestyle.
Exactly. But if they sell the stock on the open market, they will be absolutely crushed by capital gains taxes. Furthermore, they eventually want to leave a massive legacy to, let's say, a cancer research center.
So they have a multivariable equation. They need cash now, they want to avoid taxes now, and they want to give to charity later. How does the CR solve this?
The wealth advisor structures a CRAT. The client transfers the $5 million of zero-basis stock into the trust.
Okay, it's in the trust.
Now, because the ultimate beneficiary of this trust is a tax-exempt charity, the trust itself is tax-exempt.
Oh.
Therefore, the trustee can immediately sell that entire $5 million of stock and pay absolutely zero capital gains tax.
Incredible. They bypass the capital gains hit entirely, preserving the full $5 million of principal.
Exactly. The trustee takes that preserved $5 million and diversifies it into a balanced portfolio of income-producing assets.
Safe assets.
Right. And the trust document dictates that the trust will pay a fixed annuity, say 6%, which would be $300,000 a year, back to the 65-year-old client for the rest of their life.
So the client gets a perfectly predictable retirement income stream, funded by a tax-free liquidation of their concentrated stock.
And they also get an immediate partial income tax deduction in the very year they fund the trust.
Wait, how do they get a deduction if they are still getting paid?
It's based on the IRS's calculated present value of the amount the charity is expected to eventually receive.
I see.
When the client eventually passes away, the annuity payments stop, and whatever assets remain in the trust are transferred outright to the Cancer Research Center.
It is just a perfect synthesis of retirement planning, tax avoidance, and philanthropic legacy.
It really is beautiful engineering.
Okay, now let's flip the heuristic, the CLIT.
The Charitable Lead Annuity Trust.
Right. If the word lead is in the title, it means the charity takes the lead. The charity is at the front of the line, getting paid first, and the family is waiting at the end for the remainder. What is the specific mechanical use case for a CLAT?
A CLAT is a highly aggressive wealth transfer strategy utilized when a donor wants to fund a charity immediately, but ultimately wants to transfer the core principal to their children or grandchildren while minimizing gift and estate taxes.
Minimizing the taxes on the kid's inheritance.
Yes. And it is heavily dependent on the current interest rate environment, specifically a hurdle rate the IRS publishes called the Section 7520 rate.
Walk me through how the interest rates actually drive the strategy.
Okay, imagine a wealthy family wants to transfer $10 million of income-producing commercial real estate to the next generation.
$10 million. Okay.
If they gift it outright today, they use up $10 million of their lifetime exemption.
Right.
Instead, they drop the real estate into a CL with a 20-year term.
Okay, 20-year term. The charity takes the lead.
The trust is instructed to pay an annuity, say $500,000 a year to a designated charity for those entire 20 years.
So the charity is getting a lot of money up front.
When the trust is funded, the IRS looks at the value of the asset and subtracts the present value of all those future charitable payments to determine the taxable value of the gift to the children.
Because the children have to wait 20 whole years to get anything, the IRS discounts the present value of their eventual inheritance.
Exactly. And this is where the IRS hurdle rate comes in. If the IRS hurdle rate is very low, say 2%, the IRS models assume the trust won't grow very fast.
Right.
If the math assumes slow growth, but high fixed payouts to the charity, the IRS calculates that there will be almost nothing left for the kids in 20 years.
Because the charity ate it all.
Exactly. Therefore, the taxable value of the gift to the children is reduced to almost zero.
But, I mean, the wealth manager doesn't actually plan for slow growth, do they?
Of course not. The wealth manager actively invests the real estate cash flows to massively outperform that low IRS hurdle, Rob.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Over 20 years, the trust satisfies all the charitable payments. And because the investments outperform the IRS's conservative assumptions, there is still, say, $10 or $12 million of principal left in the trust.
Which then passes to the children completely free of any additional transfer taxes, because the IRS already stamped the initial guild value at new zero 20 years ago.
Exactly. The charity got millions, the kids got the real estate, and the government got essentially nothing.
It is the absolute pinnacle of leveraging tax code mechanics to achieve a multi-generational, multi-objective outcome.
It's the ultimate win-win if executed correctly.
We have covered a staggering amount of technical ground today. Let's synthesize this journey for the listeners.
Sounds good.
We have taken this CFA-W7 reading and basically mapped the entire life cycle of elite wealth transfer. We started by exploring the intense psychological and legal friction of inter vivos gifts, weighing the acquirer's dilemma against the strict necessity of donative intent.
And then we moved into the architecture of control, breaking down how discretionary trusts shield assets from creditors, and how civil law jurisdictions necessitate bespoke structures like Anstalts and Stiftungs to bypass rigid forced heirship laws.
We looked under the hood of the intentionally defective grantor trust, learning how to turn a personal income tax liability into a backdoor engine for tax-free compounding.
One of my favorites.
We ran the math on valuation strategy, sequentially stacking illiquidity and lack of control discounts to mathematically shrink a business owner's taxable footprint and avoid a forced sale.
We examine the severe fiduciary burden of the prudent investor rule, emphasizing that a trustee cannot operate in a vacuum. They must dynamically adjust the portfolio to match the beneficiary's ever-changing external resources and realities.
The DJ analogy.
And the DJ analogy, yes.
Yeah.
We contrasted that precision with the absolute chaos of intestacy, where a lack of planning invites the state to dismantle a legacy using arbitrary formulas.
And finally, we engineered the philanthropic legacy. We unpacked why a massive endowment requires a constitutional mission statement to prevent mission drift over centuries.
Right.
We navigated the specific mechanics of the vehicles, balancing the administrative freedom of a donor-advised fund against the strict 5% payout rules of a private foundation. And we timed the cash flows perfectly using the annuity and remainder mechanisms of SIRATs and CLEATs.
It really is a profound shift in perspective. Wealth management at this tier is entirely structural engineering.
Which leads me to a final underlying reality for anyone listening who is building their own net worth. We spend almost all of our financial energy fixated on accumulation.
We really do.
We track the portfolio, we negotiate the salary, we build the business. We measure success by the sheer mass of the capital we gather. But as we've uncovered in this deep dive, accumulation is only the prologue.
It's just the beginning.
The ultimate test of financial genius isn't how much you can gather, it's how intelligently and systematically you execute the transfer. When you look at the structure of your own assets today, are you actually engineering a durable legacy?
Or are you just accumulating a massive administrative nightmare for the courts, the tax authorities, and your family to untangle after you are gone?
The transfer is the final test of the wealth creator. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.